Hello everyone and welcome to Manga Sensei. So in the previous one we read the prologue of Ascendence of a Bookworm, Part 1, Volume 1, Daughter of a Soldier. Now we'll be reading Chapter 1, and for anyone who's seen the anime, like it? Comment any thoughts down below. My friend made it for me, so I'm eternally grateful. Chapter 1, A New Life. It's so hot. I hate this. A child's voice cried out directly into my head, filled me with pain and suffering. Well, what do you want me to do about it? I had no idea what to do, and over time, the voice grew increasingly quiet. The moment I realised I couldn't hear the child's voice anymore, a bubbleless thing that had been encapsulating me disappeared with a burst, and I felt my consciousness slowly rising up. At the same time, I felt a hot fever and a pain spread throughout my body, as if I had been afflicted with influenza. I nodded and agreed with the child. This certainly is hot, and certainly does hurt. I hate it too, but the child's voice didn't reply. It was so hot, I tried moving around to find a cooler spot on the bed. Maybe due to my fever, I couldn't move my body like I wanted to, but I struggled on regardless. And in this process of wriggling my body, I heard the sound of something like paper and grass rubbing together beneath me. What's that noise? My throat should have been sore due to the fever, but my childish and high-pitched voice came out of my mouth. It clearly was not my own. It sounded just like the child's voice that I'd heard in my head a second ago. I wanted to keep sleeping since the fever was making me feel so sluggish, but I couldn't ignore the fact that I was in an unfamiliar bed and that my voice wasn't my own, so I slowly lifted my heavy eyelids. My fever must have been enormous as my eyes were wet and my vision was twisted. Thankfully enough, my tears apparently serving as makeshift lenses, as I could see farther than I usually could without my glasses. What? For some reason, I could see a small, unhealthy-looking hand stretched out in front of me. Weird. My hand should be a lot bigger than this. I have the hands of an adult, not a small, malnourished child. I could move the child's hand like my own, clenching and opening it. This body that I could move in at will was not my own. The sheer shock of this revelation made my mouth dry up. What's happening? Making sure to keep the tears from dipping out of my wet eyes, I moved my gaze around while keeping my head still. It didn't take long to notice that I wasn't in my own room. The bed beneath me was hard and lacked a mattress. It was using cushions made of something prickly and rough instead. The dirty blankets thrown over me had a weird smell, and my whole body was itchy as if infested with fleas or bed bugs. Hold on. Wait, where am I? My last memory was getting crushed by an avalanche of books, and it was likely I'd been rescued in the nick of time. At the very least, I was sure no hospital in Japan would treat patients on such a filthy bed. What's going on? I definitely died, right? All signs pointed to yes. I had died, being crushed by books. That earthquake was at best a 3 or 4 on the Richter scale. It wasn't the kind of earthquake that killed people, so my death definitely ended up on the news, something like college girl nearing graduation, crushed to death by books in her own home. That's so embarrassing. I died twice that day, but once physically and once socially. I felt so embarrassed I tried rolling around on the bed, but out of fear of my heavy and pained head, I decided to double facepalm instead. I mean, okay, I definitely joked about it. I definitely thought that if I was going to die, I might as well end up getting crushed by books. I honestly did think it'd be better than dying a slow death on a hospital bed. But this was all wrong. I dreamt of a happy death, at the end of a life surrounded by books. I honestly hadn't expected an earthquake to happen and crush me to death so soon. This is awful. I just gotten hired to, oh, my sweet college library. In this troubled age of high unemployment, I just managed to land a job at a college library. Through guts and determination to fulfill my dream of a happy life surrounded by books, I passed all the necessary tests and interviews and finally secured victory. This job would involve spending far more time around books than any other, as the library had plenty of old books and documents. My mum, who was worried about me than anyone else, even started crying after hearing the news. That's wonderful, Urano. You actually found a respectable job. I'm so proud of you, she said with tears dripping out of her eyes. And days after that, I just up and die. My mind drifted to thoughts of how my mother must have cried after learning of my death. The mother I'd never meet again, would definitely be mad. I could say with confidence that at some point she'd screamed, "How many times did I tell you to get rid of some of those books?" "I'm sorry, Mum." I lifted up a heavy, sluggish hand to wipe away my tears. With great effort, I slowly lifted my head and sat up, burning hot body up before looking around the room to obtain as much information as possible. Paying no heed to my hair sticking to the back of my sweaty neck, the room had only a few dressers for storing things. 2 tables, apparently beds, each covered with filthy blankets. Sadly, there was no bookshelf in sight. I don't see any books. Maybe this is just a nightmare, a death nightmare. If God had granted my wish and reincarnated me, there should have been books nearby. My wish was to keep reading books after being reborn. After all, while thinking things through with my feverish, foggy head, I stared at a spider's nest hanging off the dark soot-stained ceiling. Soon, however, the door opened and a woman came in. Perhaps she heard me moving, or perhaps she heard me talking to myself. But either way, she was a beautiful woman with a triangular bandana tied to her head, who looked to be in her upper 20s. She had a lovely face, but she was so dirty. So dirty that I would assume she was homeless if I saw her on the streets. I don't know who this woman is, but she should really wash her face and keep herself clean. She's wasting her good looks. Mine! Blah, 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 blah. Huh? The moment I heard the woman's incomprehensible speech, a mental dam burst into my memories that were familiar, yet not my own, came rushing through. In the span of a few blinks, the accumulated years of memories belonging to this girl, named mine, had crashed through my mind like a flood and beat against my brain, causing me to reflexively clasp my head in horror. "Mine, are you okay?" "No, I'm not mine." I wanted to protest, but I couldn't. I was overwhelmed by this indescribable sensation of this strange, dirty room, and these weak, small hands became familiar to me. I got goosebumps as the language I previously couldn't understand became fully comprehensible. The huge flood of information sent me into a panic, and everything I could see before me screamed one thing: "You're not Urano anymore. You're mine." Mine, mine. The woman called out to me, worried, but to me she was just a stranger. Or she should have been, but for some reason I felt like I knew her. I felt like I loved her. The love felt gross and alien. It wasn't my own. I couldn't yet manage to obediently accept that the woman in front of me was my mother. As my repulsion and love ground against each other, the woman kept calling out my name. Mine! Mum? When I looked up, I saw this strange woman I'd never met before and called her Mum. I ceased being Urano and became mine. "Are you okay? You look like you have a headache." I instinctively didn't want to touch my mum, she who existed in my memories, yet was someone I didn't know. So I fell back onto the stinky bed to avoid her outstretched hand. I shut my eyes to fully shut out all visual stimulation. My head still hurts. I want to sleep. Okay, rest well, dear. I waited for Mum to leave the bedroom and got to work trying to grasp my situation. My head was messed up from the fever, but I wouldn't be able to sleep peacefully while panicking like this. I had no idea how things had ended up this way, but it was more important to think of what to do next rather than to get stuck in the past. Knowing how this happened wouldn't change the fact that I had to do something. If I didn't use Mind's memories to fully understand my surroundings, my family would quickly get suspicious. I began to slowly digest Mind's memories. I tried thinking as far back as I could, but her memories were those of a very young girl with a weak grasp on language. She didn't clearly understand everything Mum and Dad said, so there was a lot she didn't know. My vocabulary was so lacking that over half these memories were meaningless. Oh gosh, what do I do? From the visuals of her memories, I determined a few things. 1. My family consisted of 4 people. My mum, Aoife, my older sister, Tuli, and my dad, Gunther. It seemed like Dad was working as a soldier or something. The most shocking thing of all, however, was that this world was not my own. My memories of my bandana-wearing mum showed me that she had light green hair, a colour best described as jade. It wasn't an unnatural dyed green either. She really had green hair. Green, so realistic. I wanted to pull her hair and make sure it wasn't a wig. By the way, Tuli had green hair and Dad had blue hair. My own hair was dark blue. I didn't know whether I should be happy my hair was close to black, as I was used to, or sad that it wasn't actually black. There were apparently no mirrors in this residence, something like an apartment located on the upper floor of a tall building, so no matter how much I explored my memories, I couldn't find any details of my appearance beyond that. If I were to guess, based on how good my parents and Tuli looked, I probably didn't look half bad myself, though my appearance had no relevance to me as long as I could read books. So I wasn't worried about it. I didn't look that amazing as Urano. After all, I could live without being cute. Really, I just want to read books. I feel like my fever would vanish if I had a book in my hand. I can survive anywhere as long as I've got books. I'll endure anything, so please, books, let me have books. I placed a finger on my chin and began searching my memories for books. Let's see, I wonder why they're hiding all the books in this place. Mine, you're awake! As if to intentionally interrupt my thoughts, a young girl that looked about 7 years old stepped lightly into my room. It was Tuli, my older sister. Her green hair, tied into a slightly misshapen braid, was so dry I could immediately tell she wasn't washing it at all, just like Mum. I wish she would wash her face. She was also wasting her good looks. The reason I thought that was probably due to my upbringing in Japan, a country so fixated on cleanliness that other countries considered us to be obsessive. But I didn't care about that. There were more important things in the world, and right now there was one thing I needed to prioritise above everything else. Tuli, would you bring me a book? My older sister was old enough to know how to read, so surely there are at least a dozen picture books lying around. I could still read despite being sick and bedridden. It's a miracle I got reborn like this, since I care more about reading the books of this different world than anything else. Unfortunately, Tuli looked at me in confusion, despite my sweet smile. What's a book? You don't know? They're things with letters and stuff written on them. Some have illustrations too. Mine? What are you even saying? Can't you talk properly? I'm telling you, a book. I want a picture book. What's that? I don't know what you're talking about. Apparently, words that weren't in Mind's memories ended up coming out as Japanese, so Tuli shook her head in confusion, no matter how hard I tried to explain to her what I wanted. Geez, do your job, auto-translator. Why are you mad, Mind? I'm not mad, my head just hurts. Looks like my first job will be to pay attention to everything people say and try and learn as many new words as possible with Mind's youthful brain and my 22-year-old graduate wits and knowledge. Learning this language should be a piece of cake. I hope it'll be cake. Even when I was Urano, I worked hard with a dictionary in hand to understand foreign books. If I thought of learning this world's language as a means to read the books here, I wouldn't mind the effort at all. My love and passion for books was so great they pushed people away from me. You're mad because you still have a fever. Tuli reached out her dirty hand, likely trying to feel how hot my forehead was. I reflexively grabbed her hand. I'm still sick. You'll catch it too. That's true. I'll be careful. Safe. By acting like I was worried about her, I could avoid things I didn't like. I managed to avoid getting touched by Tuli's dirty hand using the advanced social techniques of adults. She wasn't a bad older sister, but I didn't want her to touch me before getting clean, or so I thought. Before looking down at my own filthy hands and sighing, I want to take a bath, my head's itchy. The moment I murmured that, Mind's memories informed me of the unfortunate truth. The best I would get is a bucket of water to dump over my head and a tattered rag to rub against myself. No, you can't call that a bath. Also, there's no toilet here, just a chamber pot. Give me a break. Attention, whichever God put me here, I want to live somewhere modern and convenient. My environment was so bad it honestly made me want to cry. When I was Urano, I lived in a very normal household. I never had problems with food, clothes, using the bathroom, or getting books. This new life was a huge downgrade. I miss Japan. It was filled with so many wonderful things I took for granted. Soft, wash clothes, comfortable beds, books. No matter how much nostalgia I felt, I had no choice but to live in this new world. Crying wouldn't get me anywhere. I had to teach my family the value of cleanliness. As far as I could tell from my memories, mine was a weak little girl who often had fevers and ended up bedridden for days at a time. Most of her memories involved the bed. If I didn't improve my environment, I would probably be dead before long. I could imagine from the poor conditions I was put in while sick that it would be ideal to avoid needing medical attention at all costs. I need to clean up this room and figure out how to take baths ASAP. I'm kind of a lazy person that avoided chores as much as possible, even with the convenient modern electronics. I cared more about reading books and helping my mum. Am I going to be able to live here? I shook my head to get those thoughts out of my mind. No. Like I said, it's a miracle I got reincarnated at all. I need to be more positive. How lucky. I get to read books that don't even exist on Earth. Okay, I'm getting enthusiastic again. First in order, I need to focus on reading books without worrying. I had to take care of my body. I slowly shut my eyes so I could rest as my consciousness faded into darkness. One thought dominated my mind. I don't care what it is. I just want to read a book as soon as possible. Whichever God put me here, please pity me and grant me a book. Also, this might be asking for a bit much, but I want a library filled to the brim with books too. End of chapter. So that was chapter 1. I'm going to say the same thing as last time. Any questions you've got, any queries, any ideas of what might be to come, comment them down below. And I'll see you next time, all you weebs and otakus out there who just want to listen to the light novel. Everyone loves to be lazy every now and then. Right, I'll do chapter 2 tomorrow, and I will see you then. Bye!